Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This is the Bodega Cat Book Club Financial Edition. And today we are continuing our reading of Gold Warriors by Sterling and Peggy Seagrave. The subtitle is called America's Secret Recovery of Yamashita's Gold. So this particular book was inspired by current events, particularly in the precious metals area. So I thought in the financial sector. So I thought it would be interested to learn a little bit about its history, hidden histories, which is something I like to explore, and know a little bit more about it and the stories behind it. So, anyways, that's where the inspiration comes from for this particular book. And first of all, I want to thank you for being here and welcome. If you like what we do here, please do consider checking out our other book clubs. We have our spiritual book clubs on Mondays and then our health book clubs on Wednesdays. And we put all the book clubs that we've read on YouTube, past books as well as present books. And we have it on a playlist, so you guys can just download it and listen to it when you're walking your dog, when you're stuck in traffic, when you're doing, laundry or household chores or whatever it is that you do. And we have other contents on there as well, not just the book club. So please do go there and check it out and like and subscribe and comment and all that good stuff. And also consider signing up for our free monthly newsletter as well. And if you want to support us further, you can buy me a coffee, leave a donation. Check out our merch on our shop section on our website. We have many different merches for your fur babies, for your doggies and your kitties, as well as for humans. So we're always constantly updating our current designs or putting up new designs. So please come back often and check them out and support us that way. And if you are local in the Los Angeles area or if you're visiting LA area, please do come visit us in person. We have a healing center that we use. Technologies based on Nikola Tesla's scalar wave research for holistic healing for both domestic cats and dogs and humans. So please do come check it out. You can learn all about that particular technology on our website, as well as our other services that we provide as well. So, whatever way, shape, or form that you support us, we thank you very, very much. But most importantly, we thank you for being here and for, you know, going through this reading journey with us. We love these book clubs, we love to read, and we love to share the knowledge. And we want to thank you to all the authors who have put in the work and the energy and the hours to give us such beautiful knowledge and enlightenment, really. Knowledge is a form of light, it's a form of enlightenment. Okay, so here, this is part five, chapter five, part one. Now, the book has a lot of endnotes at the end of the chapter. So what I'll do is I'll read about a page or a section or so, and then I'll go to the back of the book to read the chapter because sometimes they have like paragraphs where they have like backstories or explanations that they didn't put in the chapter itself. So that's kind of our format there. And I'm just going to move the camera in a little bit here. Oops, a little too much, Christina. Okay, so if you have a book, you could follow with us there. If not, you can follow with us here on camera. And if you don't have a book or you're driving, you can just listen. Whatever works for you. Okay, here we go. Chapter 5, Hiding the Blunder. By May 1942, cargoes of blunder were piling up at Pier 15 in Manila. All treasure from Southeast Asia had to move by sea because the Japanese did not control a ground route from Southeast Asia through China until late 1944. Manila was a logical place to bring it together for final sorting and inventory before sending it on to Japan aboard returning freighters or damaged warships limping home for repairs. It was still Japan's hope that it could hold on to the Philippines and Indonesia, whatever negotiated settlement brought the war to an end. But these expectations collapsed a month later in June 1942, 6 months after Pearl Harbor and 3 months after the fall of Singapore. When Japan lost the Battle of Midway and never regained, oh, okay, sorry, that was when Japan lost the Battle of Midway and never gained the upper hand or never regained the upper hand. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna move the camera in just a little bit closer here so I can, yeah, that's better. That way I can see. Yay. Okay. All right, continue. The sea route to Japan remained open because U.S. submarines were armed with defective torpedoes that went astray or bounced off Japanese hulls. This was not corrected until early 1943. To protect the precious cargoes from being attacked by Allied planes, Emperor Hirohito provided Prince Chichibu initially with four 10,000-ton fast passenger ships painted white with huge green crosses to indicate that they were hospital ships. Japan refused to use the International Red Cross. Each ship's identity was hidden with false superstructure and extra funnels. To confuse sightings further, each was given the name of a legitimate Japanese hospital ship. The phony hospital ships took on cargoes of treasure at Singapore or Batavia and also boarded hundreds of VIP passengers. Japanese diplomats or senior officers and their families felt safer traveling aboard hospital ships protected from attack by international law. As many people can personally attest, the Japanese never hesitated to bomb and strafe hospitals or hospital ships, later excusing this action by saying they had never consented to the Geneva Conventions on Warfare. But they were certain that Allied planes and subs would not intentionally attack a Japanese hospital ship. Setting sail, the fake hospital ships avoided main sea lanes, steamed east through the Java Sea to the Celebes, uh, sorry, butchered that word, followed the coast of Borneo north to Mindanao, then threaded their way through the Philippine Islands to Manila Bay. Okay, let's see what kind of footnote we have back there. Let's see what page that is. Page 58. Okay. All right, chapter 5. Much of what we know about the Golden Lily treasure sites in the Philippines comes from documents found in the safe of President Ferdinand Marcos after he was deposed in 1986. Other information comes from Robert Curtis. In 1975, Nevada mining expert Robert Curtis was brought to the Philippines by President Marcos to study the Golden Lily treasure maps, reverse engineer them, and begin recoveries. Aside from Ben Valmores, Robert Curtis was the only non-Japanese to study and photograph all 175 maps before all but three of the originals were deliberately destroyed. Over a period of 6 months, Curtis visited the most important sites in and around Manila and explored the 35 miles of tunnels under the city, often in the company of Ben Valmores and others who were eyewitnesses to particular urban sites. Curtis had the help of a team of scholars to analyze the Japanese ideographs and coding on each map, and the help of geologists and engineers in studying the lay of each site. The purpose was to select the most promising vaults for recovery by Filipino army units under the direct control of President Marcos. As a result, Curtis gained a rare first-hand appreciation for the thinking behind many of these sites. Later, he was able to apply this to analyzing other sites. We revisited many of the sites ourselves to verify his logic and became convinced that Curtis got it right. Our site descriptions are based on the Curtis reconstruction of the Japanese engineering. A vast number of documents and photographs related to treasury recovery by Curtis, Marcos, and others are reproduced from the originals on our CDs. Okay, so the note about Japan gained an overland route from Southeast Asia to China following the success of Operation Ichigo in late 1944, but held it only briefly. The note about phony hospital ships. Readers interested in learning more about these phony hospital ships are directed to the extensive literature on the Awa Maru, which was sunk by a U.S. submarine, provoking an international incident and a court-martial of American officers. Had the truth been known at the time that Japan's true use of such ships, the court-martial might not have taken place. Interesting. Okay. All right, continue. Other ships were added when suitable foreign vessels were captured. A prime example was a Dutch passenger liner, Op ten Noord, named after a famous pioneer of the age of steamships. Her capture off Java in February 1942 began an extraordinary odyssey. She made many voyages carrying treasure to the Philippines and Japan. Then, at war's end, was filled with gold bullion and scuttled off Mizuru Naval Base to be recovered by the Japanese in 1990. Our photos of her recovery, obtained from one of the participants, reveal the continuing involvement of senior government officials and major Japanese corporations in profiteering from Golden Lily plunder half a century after the end of the Pacific War, CCDs. Built in Amsterdam in 1927, the Op ten Noord entered service as a passenger liner for the Royal Packet Navigation Company in the East Indies. Based in Java, she plied a regular course known as the Great Express Service between Surabaya, Semarang, Batavia, Belawan, Delhi, and Singapore. She was a pretty ship with a plumb bow, single tall funnel, and graceful cruiser stem, very popular with Dutch in the archipelago. Just over 6,000 tons, her Lentz steam engine gave her a cruising speed of 15 knots, and she could accommodate 200 passengers in first and second classes, carrying another 1,200 native deck passengers. With the outbreak of the Pacific War, she was refitted as a hospital ship for the Dutch Navy with Red Cross hull numbers clearly displayed. Through diplomatic channels, Japan was notified, and Tokyo sent a reply officially recognizing her as a hospital ship. Nevertheless, on February 21, 1942, when the Op ten Noord was in the western entrance to Surabaya, being degaussed to protect her from magnetic mines, she was attacked by two Japanese aircraft. Their bombs managed the ship and killed one doctor and two nurses. Captain G. Twizinga took her slowly into Surabaya harbor for repairs. 6 days later, the Battle of the Java Sea began. It was less a battle than a massacre. The Japanese fleet was armed with new torpedoes that had an astonishing range of 30,000 yards, with an oxygen propulsion system that left no revealing trail of bubbles. The British cruiser Exeter was damaged by one of these. The Dutch cruisers De Ruyter and Java were sunk, along with three destroyers, gutting the Allied fleet. Hurrying out of repair yard in Surabaya to look for survivors, the Op ten Noord came upon the battle scene and was immediately intercepted by two Japanese destroyers, whose boarding parties crippled her radio room. She was forbidden to assist any wounded and told to remain where she was. At noon the next day, Captain Twizinga decided to make a run for Australia and headed down the Java coast at top speed. 3 hours later, they were intercepted by a Japanese plane that dropped bombs and ordered them to turn back. Following orders, they proceeded to Banjarmasin, where they took aboard 970 Allied POWs for transport under guard to Makassar, including 800 survivors from the cruiser Exeter, many of them naked. There, the ship remained for 8 months as a hospital facility for the POW camps. When he tried to stop a Japanese guard from contaminating sterilized surgical instruments, one of the medical staff, S.J. Wymans, was badly beaten in front of the entire ship's complement. On October 23rd, 1942, the Opten North sailed for Yokohama wearing a Japanese flag. Arriving on December 5th, 1942, Captain Zuizinga asked to speak to the Swiss representative of the International Red Cross, but was refused. Instead, the full ship's crew and medical staff, 29 men and 15 nurses, were put in a prison camp at a former American missionary school in Myoshi, 75 kilometers from Hiroshima, where, as members of the Red Cross, they were treated better than POWs. Okay, let's see what kind of endnote we have here. Okay, the Opten North. In our CDs, we include documents and photographs covering the ship's whole career, including her capture, the fate of her crew and medical complement, her scuttling and salvaging of her gold cargo in the early 1990s. We include many color photographs of the recovery operation, the ships involved, and the Japanese and other participants. The note about the ship that was named after Lawrence, Opten North. The ship was named after Lawrence, Opten North, a pioneer in Dutch merchant shipping in the early age of steam. The note about the photos, specifications, photos, and drawings of the Opten North in her first incarnation. You could find that in Talbot Booth merchant ships. The note about the Battle of Java, details of the Battle of the Java Sea are from Tolan, Rising Sun, page 322 to 324. The note about Opten North being intercepted by Amatsukase. Opten North was intercepted by the Amatsukase and the Murasame. You can find that in F.C. Van Oosten, The Battle of the Java Sea, page 74. And the note about Hikawa Maru. The Hikawa Maru had served as a hospital ship previously. It is still a tourist attraction at Yokohama today. Okay. All right, let's continue. At Yokohama, meanwhile, the Opten North was fitted with a false profile, a second funnel painted white with huge green crosses, and given the name Tenno Maru. 3 months later, in March 1943, she was again renamed, and this time posing as the Hikawa Maru, a much bigger 11,000-ton Japanese fast liner built for the NYK line in 1929 and officially registered as a hospital ship. The real Hikawa Maru remained berthed in Yokohama, serving as a hotel and tourist attraction. The disguised Upton North then sailed for Singapore, carrying armaments and VIP families. For the remainder of the war, she sailed between Singapore and Manila, carrying treasure for Golden Lily. In October 7, 1944, she was sighted in the Java Sea by the Dutch submarine Zwaardvis. Sorry, it means swordfish, but I'm butchered that word. Sorry about that. But the sub skipper let her pass because he thought she was a legitimate Japanese hospital ship. On November 1st of that year, her name was changed back to Tenomaru. Just weeks before the war ended, she reached Yokohama again loaded with treasure. Instead of offloading, she was taken to Maizuru Naval Base on the west coast of Japan, where more gold and platinum bars were put aboard, along with large quantities of diamonds and rubies. 2 days before Japan's surrender was announced, she was taken out into Maizuru Bay late at night. Her Japanese captain and small crew were shot dead, and the ship was scuttled by opening her Kingston valve. The Japanese government informed the Dutch government that what had once been the Opten Noord had been sunk by a mine during the war. When it was recovered in 1990, Japanese sources valued the cargo at 3 trillion yen, or $30 billion US dollars. We return to the story of her recovery in chapter 14. The Opten Noord was just one of Japan's many fake hospital ships. What became of all the treasure moved around on them is fascinating and complex riddle that has remained secret to this day. Pieces of the puzzle lie scattered around the Pacific Rim, only requiring patience to assemble. Here is what we have pieced together. Once plunder reached Japan, strategic materials like bauxite and tungsten went to war production or were concealed in underground bunkers on military installations from which they surfaced years later. There were many such bunkers around Nizuru Naval Base, for example. As for hard currencies, Japan was confronted by a logical problem coping with coinage stolen from so many countries. Gold and silver coins were kept intact, while uh, while brass, bronze, and copper coins were melted down for war industries. In the Dutch East Indies, Japan later admitted seizing over 196 million guilders worth of coins. Many of these had just been minted in the United States. When Holland was overrun by the Nazis in the 1940s, the Dutch colonial government in Java was unable to obtain coinage from home and had to have new coins made at mints in San Francisco, Denver, and Washington, D.C. These coins had just been distributed throughout the islands when Japan invaded and seized them. In 1946, American sources told the Dutch military mission that 110 cases of these coins were known to have been transferred from Yokosuka Naval Base to the Bank of Japan. Okay, let's see what kind of endnotes we have there. Okay. So the eyewitness accounts of the capture and treatment of the crew and passengers from Opten Noord. So that was the eyewitness details of the capture and treatment of the crew and passengers are from the recollections of Dr. A.W. Malema, Chief Medical Officer and second in command of the Opten Noord, reproduced on our CDs. The note about Captain Twizinga. Captain Twizinga wrote a letter of protest on 21 August 1943 to the Japanese Chief of Police. Excuse me. To the Japanese Chief of Police at Myoshi, itemizing abuses they suffered. After that, their treatment improved. Crew member interviewed in 2001 by Albert Kelder. The note about the scuttling of the Opten Noord. Scuttling of the Opten Noord in Maizuru Bay, recounted by members of the crew. Recollections reproduced on our CDs. The note about Dutch looted guilders. The Dutch looted guilders. At war's end, the U.S. government set up the Far East Commission, FEC, to trace looted property. In a matter of months, it became clear. Oops, sorry about that. It became clear to the members of the FAC that they were being sidetracked by Washington, which had its own reasons for blocking close scrutiny. The Dutch delegation to FEC, headed by Dr. G.A.P. Wager, managed to interrogate a number of Japanese who had served in the Indies during the occupation. One of these was Yamamoto, the chief liquidator of all banks in the Dutch colony during the war. He was interrogated in January 1946 and submitted a summary of the coinage in public circulation in March 1942. Yamamoto's April 1944 report to the Ministry of War listed total coinage seized from Java banks between October 1942 and March 1944 at 18,242,000 guilders. This did not include coinage seized on Sumatra and other islands. The Javash Bank filed a claim for the return of 20 million guilders worth of silver coin. Wow, that's a lot of precious metals when you think about it. Oop, okay, where am I? So current events, you hear a lot about, oh, let's take silver, for example. We don't have any more silver. We're short on silver. I wonder how true that is. Just a thought. Lieutenant General Schilling of the Dutch military mission reported to his government in September 1947 that 30 tons of Dutch silver, 5,637 ingots, had been recovered from Tokyo Bay. This had been confiscated by the Japanese 16th Army on Java and shipped aboard fake hospital ships to the Osaka Mint. Other Dutch ingots were recovered from Echugina Bay. Thanks to post-war detective work by Dutch Navy Lieutenant A. Luijen, 187 tons of stolen Dutch silver bullion from Java, traced to the Bank of Japan, was later returned to the Netherlands Mint. Lieutenant Luijen, who spent the war in Japan as a POW slave laborer, said Dutch, Indian, British, Filipino, Chinese, and Indo-Chinese coinage was brought in oil drums to a company named Kokusho, housed in the former Standard Oil refinery at Asandori, just south of Tokyo between Kawasaki and Yokohama. The manager of the facility was Army Captain Yamasaki. One of the Dutch POWs there, CHL Broekhuizen, helped sort the coins. His Japanese foreman told him it was the government's intention to conceal the gold and silver coins until after the war, then melt down and recast the metal as ingots, as to launder it. Other POWs saw re-smelting of copper coins at a factory in Hitachi, 100 miles north of Tokyo. American POW Ed Jackford interned at Tokyo area POW Camp Number 2 in Kawasaki told us, quote, I had the occasion of working on a slave labor detail known to us as Kokusho. It was an oil refinery that was owned prior to World War II by the Standard Oil Company. We saw Standard Oil signs everywhere on the property. They had huge warehouses there. On many occasions, we were assigned duties of working in these warehouses. Much to our surprise, we discovered that much of the loot brought by Japanese ships from Southeast Asia was stored in these warehouses. We examined hundreds of bags of silver coins of almost every Southeast Asian nation. There had to be tons of these coins warehoused there. There were other types of stolen booty there to which we paid little attention. End quote. Among these were great quantities of loose diamonds, also kept in oil drums. Ultimately, the diamonds and colored gems were sorted and graded, the finest set aside, while the smallest were consigned to industrial use. The rest were poured back into the barrels for storage in warehouses and private vaults of the elite. Admiral Kodama and other Japanese officers and gangsters in Southeast Asia kept the biggest and best diamonds, sapphires, and rubies. Kodama was able to ship his back to Japan aboard military aircraft, but most officers hid their collections of jewels in officer stashes to be recovered and sold after the war. In our CDs, we reproduce documents describing several very large stones recovered from officer stashes in the Philippines and offered for private sale. Gold and platinum ingots reaching Japan overland from China or by sea were placed either in private vaults or in tunnels and underground bunkers in the Japan Alps, massively built to withstand bombs and earthquakes. All indications are that relatively little of the treasure was put directly into Japanese banks because the ruling elite had no intention of sharing this treasure with the lower orders. It was for this very reason that Golden Lily had been created in the first place to secure the bulk of the treasure for the Imperial family, Japan's most powerful clique, and the tycoons who were its most important supporters. The biggest underground bunker complex is at the Matsushiro in the mountains near Nagano, site of the 1998 Winter Olympics. The Matsushiro bunker is a honeycomb of reinforced concrete tunnels, 10 kilometers long, with more than 60,000 cubic feet of underground space originally intended to house the imperial family, leading families of the aristocracy, and all government agencies if Japan was invaded by the Allies. Japanese sources told us some of its branch tunnels were used to house enough gold and platinum bars to underwrite Japan's post-war recovery. Matsushiro was dug by 10,000 Korean slave laborers, most of whom never were seen again, said to have been buried alive when the branch tunnels were sealed. Wow. Okay, let's see what kind of endnote we have there. 60. Okay. The note about the Kokusho Loot Processing Center. Kokusho Loot Processing Center. Ed Jackford's description of Kawasaki number 2 and the loot stored there. Jackford emailed letter, uh, Jackford email letter to the Center for Attorney Rights, Inc., CFIR, November 2nd, 1999. He gave similar testimony before the Hatch hearings in 2000. The note about Hirohito's bunker at Matsushiro. You can find that in Cook, Hirohito's Secret Hideout. Military History Quarterly, Spring 1998, Volume 10, Number 3, page 44 to 47. Cook and Cook, Japan at War, and Oral History. Okay. All right, continue. Tragically, this was not a rare occurrence. After the war, Allied investigations learned that 387 American, British, Australian, and Dutch POWs had suffered a similar fate on the Japanese island called Sado, off the northwest coast of Honshu. This beautiful but remote island was traditionally used as a place of exile for deposed emperors, aristocrats, poets, priests, and convicted criminals. It had a gold mine owned and operated by Mitsubishi, notorious for brutal treatment of slave laborers. These Allied POWs were working in one of the shafts of the mine near the island town of Ikawa. Normally, 50 men worked on the surface, transferring coal from wheeled ore bins into hoppers. But on August 2nd, 1945, just before Japan's surrender, all prisoners, all the prisoners were herded into the deepest part of the mine, 400 feet below the surface, where they were put to work hewing out a seam of gold. Guards discreetly withdrew to the surface, where they were ordered to push all the wheeled ore bins into the mine shaft. The night before, Japanese demolition experts had concealed explosive charges in the mine shaft at depths of 200 and 300 feet. At 9:10 a.m., while all the Allied slave laborers were deep below, orders were given to blow the mine. Lieutenant Suda Yoshiro, second in command of the forced labor camp, described the event to war crime investigators. Quote, I was watching from a distance of 100 yards and witnessed a rush of smoke and dust from the mine's entrance. While waiting for the smoke and dust to clear, every available guard was set to work dismantling the narrow gauge steel track and then carrying portions of it into the mine entrance. By 10:30 a.m., all traces of the steel track had been removed. Then the demolition detail entered the mine to set more explosive charges just inside the entrance. By 10:30 a.m., Oh, sorry. It was while returning to the prison camp that I heard a loud explosion. Looking back, I saw an avalanche of rock and earth completely cover where the mine entrance had been, end quote. Suda did not mention seeing treasure put into the mine before it was blown, but what other reason would there have been for so completely removing all traces of track and obscuring the entrance? If Mitsubishi had nothing to hide, the 387 Allied POWs on Sado would have been repatriated without complications, like many others. More than 1,000 Korean slave laborers working under Mitsubishi gold mine on Sado Island also vanished without a trace at war's end. Their existence only became known in 1991 when official records were released of Mitsubishi Corporation's distribution of cigarette rations to its wartime slave laborers. It is perverse to be remembered as a victim of mass murder only by a tally of cigarette butts. It is a matter of public record that American forces reported finding immense hoards of war loot in Japan before all information of this type was obliterated from archives in the United States. The document is titled Reports of General MacArthur in Japan, the Occupation Military Phase, Volume 1 supplement prepared by his General Staff, Library of Congress, catalog card number 66-60006. Facsimile reprint, 1994, Center for Military History, publication 13-4. There are troves of Japanese-owned gold and silver, quote, property that was acquired by Japan under duress, wrongful acts of confiscation, disposition, or spoliation, end quote. Another quote, property found in Japan and identified as having been located in an allied country, China, and removed to Japan by fraud or coercion by the Japanese or their agents, end quote. Quote, great hoards of silver, gold, precious stones, foreign postage stamps, engraving Japanese, end quote. 30,000 carats of diamonds in one stash, and a single find of 52.5 pounds of hoarded platinum, with a value at the time of 54 million yen, over 13 million US dollars in 1945 values. The document says, quote, one of the spectacular tasks of the occupation dealt with collecting and putting under guard the great hoards of gold, silver, precious stones, foreign postage stamps, engraving plates, and all currency not legal in Japan, end quote. Quote, Eighth Army was directed to seize and maintain custody of precious metals and diamond stockpiles owned or controlled by the Japanese or Axis governments in Japan during the war. Eighth Army agencies were also authorized to confiscate and deposit precious metals and gems in United States vaults in Tokyo or Osaka whenever such items were found, end quote. Okay, let's see what kind of endnote we have there. Okay, the quote about Hirohito's bunker. Hirohito's bunker at Matsushiro. You can find that in Cook, Hirohito's Secret Hideout, Military History Quarterly, Spring 1998, Volume 10, Number 3, page 44 to 47. Oh, I think I read that already. Cook and Cook, you could also find that in Cook and Cook, Japan at War and Oral History. The note about Mitsubishi landmines, Mitsubishi gold mines, sorry, Mitsubishi gold mines, POWs, and the Sato investigation. Captain J.G. Godwin, investigating officer, 2nd Australian War Crimes Section, 16 December 1949. BMP report of investigating officer, file 125M, quoted in McKay, Betrayal in High Places, page 249 to 251. I think that's it, right? We haven't read about the Koreans. Did we read about the Koreans? Yes, we did. Okay, the note about vanished Koreans on Sado Island. Vanished Koreans on Sado Island at Mitsubishi Mining Works. Japan's secret was found in records of cigarette rations. Mitsubishi officers burnt other incriminating evidence about the Sado operations and the murders of the Korean slave laborers. Wake, you could find that in Waicot, Sado, Japan's island of exile. I think I read up to page 63, right? Let me check here. Yeah, okay. Okay, the note about the war loot discovered by Army occupation forces in Japan. Quote, one of the spectacular tasks. Sorry. You can find that in one of the spectacular tasks. Reports of General MacArthur in Japan, the occupation military phase. Volume 1 supplement, page 223. Selected pages of the original report are produced on RCD. The note about Sado Island gold mines. The description of the POW massacre is drawn from McKay, Betrayal in High Places, page 249 to 252. Mitsubishi owned the main Sado gold mine, which had over 250 miles of tunnels, some as much as 2,500 feet deep. Japanese sources told us that some of these tunnels were used to hide quantities of gold, platinum, and gems during and after the war. Much of the treasure looted in China was shipped to Japan through occupied Korea and then carried by ship across the strait to the Japanese home islands, for which Sado provided a convenient offshore haven. As a penal colony and gold mine, Sado Island always was a stronghold of the Japanese underworld and smugglers. It is in Niigata Prefecture, Prime Minister Tanaka's home district. Just before the end of the war, Tanaka made a fortune trading Japanese scrip for gold bullions held by Japanese banks in occupied Korea. Tanaka then smuggled this bullion back to Japan by ship, apparently stashing it on Sado where he could access it after the occupation ended. Today, Sado is a tourist destination and theme park for gold jewelry and ornaments with a very dark history. The Allied POWs who died horribly there have never been vindicated. Hmm. Okay, let us continue. Okay. From this, it is abundantly clear that America knew Japan looted treasure from countries it occupied. What happened to the treasure thereafter remains a state secret to this day. Boy, wouldn't it be something if the current administration would un undeclassify it or declassify this particular information, isn't it, from the State Department? And we're talking about the current administration in 2026. Interesting, eh? Hmm. Anyways, okay. In 1947, General MacArthur brought a number of American gemologists to Tokyo. One of these was Edward P. Henderson. According to an oral history interview conducted by the Smithsonian Institution, MacArthur invited Henderson to Japan to appraise some $50 million in gems that the U.S. Army had recovered in Tokyo. Some were found in the ashes of buildings that had burned to the ground. Henderson recalled, quote, "We got buckets full of sand and gravel with a lot of diamonds in it. So one of our big problems was getting the dirt and smoke and stuff off. We were working in the Bank of Japan down in their vaults where they keep all their gold." End quote. According to journalist Robert Whiting, some 800,000 carats of diamonds were later transferred from the Bank of Japan to the custody of MacArthur's command, and these diamonds were never seen again. All attempts to trace any documentary record of them in U.S. archives have failed. It would be interesting to know how 800,000 carats of diamonds looted by Japan during World War II now qualify in Washington as, quote, top secret for reasons of national security, end quote. Whose national security? 5 tons of silver bullion found in Mitsui warehouse illustrate the problem Japan had keeping war loot from falling into Allied hands. Because warehouses were insecure, caves, tunnels, and mine shafts were a far better solution. Even Admiral Kodama, Japan's top gangster, was stymied when he ran out of hiding places for his personal loot and had to avail himself of a privileged hiding place, the vaults of the Imperial Palace. According to the Tokyo Journal, quote, Kodama had a good portion of these valuables transported to the vault of the imperial family in the Imperial Palace. Eventually, the minister of the imperial household told him to remove them before they were discovered by the occupation authorities. The rumor was that the official's action was at the direct request of the emperor, end quote. But what about all the treasures still in the Philippines? Ah, interesting question, eh? We'll stop there for now. Let's see, let's read the rest of the endnotes that we have here for this section. Okay. So the note about MacArthur's discovery of the $50 million in diamonds and Edward Henderson's assessment of the hoard, you could find that in Michael Kernan Around the Mall, Smithsonian Magazine, May 1995. The note about 800,000 carats of diamonds that disappeared, you can find that in Whiting, Tokyo Underworld, page 19. The note about 5-ton stash of silver in the Mitsui warehouse. You can find that in Roberts, Mitsui, page 377. Mitsui was the largest employer of forced labor and had few scruples about burying live employees trapped in mining accidents. Roberts, Mitsui, page 358. There were also reports in the U.S. press at this time about this loot and other caches of valuables like narcotics. The note about Kodama stashing his loot in the Imperial Palace. You can find that in Carol, The Enigma of Hoshio Kodama, Tokyo Journal, July 1988, page 94. Stephen Barber, a financial consultant who worked on the House of Nomura, wrote, quote, I have a friend who works at the top of a Swiss private bank. He told me recently that he was approached by a Philippine general who claimed that tons of Japanese war gold was buried underneath the Philippine embassy in Tokyo and wanted to do a deal to transfer it to Switzerland. He was dismissed as a crackpot. Perhaps not. Barber emailed to the authors November 30th, 1999. Wow. Very interesting chapter, eh? A lot of these people who did very bad things to other people, like burying them alive underneath the mines, they have a lot of karma to what's the word I want? They have a lot of karma to I'm having a senior moment here. There's a word that I'm looking for. It's at the tip of my brain, and I just can't remember. They have a lot to answer to. That was what I was talking about. Okay. I think I need a second cup of coffee. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. Leave me your thoughts. What do you think about this particular chapter? Uh, about the fake warships. Sun Tzu, Art of War, talks about deception all the time. War, deception is necessary. Some do it for good causes. Some do it for nefarious causes, not so good causes. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time in our next book club. Bye-bye now.